So how's a brew? So Nokia were kind enough to send me a Lumia 1520 to give it a test, let them know my honest opinion of it, and kind of, you know, give it a test, see what I think, and create some content, create some videos, etc, etc. As it transpires, I haven't actually managed to create very much content because I've been ill the past week and I've been so busy. I haven't really had a chance to create some good quality content about it. So I'm going to do my phone review before I hand it back to the Connect team over at Nokia. So before we go into any actual opinions or anything like that, let's reel off specifications. So it's packing a Qualcomm Snapdragon 800, which is a quad-core 2.2 GHz processor. It's got a 3400 mAh battery, 32 GB of mass memory, so that's internal storage, 2 GB of RAM, a micro SD card, slot which can take up to 64 gigs of micro SD cardness, a 1920 by 1080p screen, which is a 6-inch screen running at 368 pixels per inch. 20 megapixel front-facing camera, rear-facing camera with pure view, and a 1.2 megapixel front-facing camera. It's got Carl's Zeiss optics. It's got a half-inch sensor, give or take. It's got an f2.4 aperture if you're interested in that. And minimum focus range is 10 centimeters. It's got dual flash, and that's kind of it, really. So Lumia 1520. What's it like? Well, I would say it's a great phone. Don't get me wrong, it's a really great phone. And I love Windows Phone. Windows Phone is probably the best mobile operating system you can possibly use. I would stand by that. I don't care what people say. It really is the best OS ever. However, what lets Windows Phone down is the apps. That's one thing I don't really like, is the fact that, yeah, Windows Live Tile is fantastic, but some of the apps that they've got on here just are lacking. The Twitter app, for instance. There's some things that are better than the Android app and better than the iOS app, but the majority of the stuff is kind of worse. Same with the Instagram app I don't really like. Same with things like Snapchat, same with things like Spotify. Simple things like you can't select the order of the songs that they're in, and that's not the fault of Microsoft, that's the fault of the developers in the first place, not developing the apps and not updating them. And the thing is, it's kind of like one of those perpetual things that developers don't update the apps because nobody uses the apps, but nobody uses the apps, nobody uses the system because there aren't any apps for it and it's not up to date. So it's kind of like a never-ending thing, and if developers actually get on board with it, then it'll be a great system. But as a phone, if you ignore the fact it's got Windows Phone on it, and you ignore the fact that there's problems with App Store and everything else like that, it's a great phone. I mean, the camera is pretty good. You can see some of the comparisons I'll do against my Xperia Z, my 600D and my EOS M as well, versus the 1520 in terms of camera quality. It is pretty good. I mean, if you look at some of the colours, they're rich, they're great, they look fantastic. 20 megapixels doesn't really make that much difference. I wouldn't necessarily say that the Carl Zeiss optics seems to have actually done anything. I'd say it's probably more of a marketing gimmick as opposed to anything else. In terms of low light photography, it does some weird like HDR-ness kind of thing. So it will take a series of photos, kind of combine them together, and when you've got no light and you've got no flash, it'll create this quite good, actually, as long as you stand still, run really still and don't have the shakes. It'll create some really, really good photos, as you can see. One of the downsides to it, though, is if you use the flash in a dark situation, I think the flash seems to be a bit too narrow. It seems to be picking out, like, basically where the flash kind of aims itself. So when you look at some of the photos going through all these Lumia 1520 photos, you notice that there's really, where the flash is, it's really defined within that specific spot on the image. It's not like filling the whole screen, filling the whole image like you kind of expect flash to do, and that's kind of what the Xperia Z does. Obviously, comparing it to the EOS M, it's not even, you know, it's not a comparison because it's got a dedicated flash gun and everything else like that, but equally, it's kind of like, it's not even kind of trying to do flash properly. And comparing it to the Xperia Z, which is a lot older phone, you kind of expect it to kind of be better, and I think that's one thing that kind of lets it down. The flash is a little bit rubbish. The other thing as well is things like it's got two lenses, which basically means within Windows Phone you have things called lenses, and they're kind of like third-party apps that kind of attach onto the camera, and it can access the camera, and you can use different camera apps depending upon what you want to do. So obviously there's the default Windows Mobile one, which is perfectly fine, but Nokia create one called Nokia Camera, and it does like it takes a series of photos, call them live photos or something, and as you scroll through in your gallery, you can see it kind of like scrolling through a bit like a video. So what it does is it kind of combines those, and if you're like moving, it kind of like blurs some stuff, and it will pick some stuff out and make it kind of sharp, but it's kind of, it's doing it in a kind of weird way, and I don't like it. It doesn't work all the time, and it's quite annoying. So for instance, yesterday I was on the train coming across to the Tamar Bridge at Plymouth, and it was struggling to try and capture some of those pictures because the bridge was in the way, and the shutter delay on this is ridiculous. Like, I know phones aren't supposed to be that fast in terms of, you know, I mean, obviously it's designed for Twitter. That's really all mobile phone cameras are really designed for. They're not really designed for, you know, anything else other than that, really. And so you don't expect it to be an insanely fast shutter speed, but you expect it to, at least when you press the button, there'll be maybe a second delay. But there's an annoying amount of delay, to the extent that when you've only got like a small window to capture that photo, if there's a difference between capturing that photo and not capturing that photo, 9 times out of 10 you won't capture the photo, which is really, really annoying. In terms of video though, it's absolutely fantastic. I mean, this is the front-facing camera. I know I showed this to you in my first impressions video, but it's really quite impressive. And actually, I'd say that, you know, this would probably be a fantastic YouTube camera. Like, if I was out and about and I went to London, I was just out and about somewhere, I wouldn't then have to take my EOS M with me, because the Lumia 1520 manages to capture all the stuff I wanted to capture. The audio is great, it looks fantastic, and then if you move around to the rear-facing camera, it looks even better again. And actually, I have to say, it is really, really quite impressive. And I think one of the benefits is that it's got a 20 megapixel sensor in there. So because it's got a 20 megapixel sensor, it doesn't need to use all that to capture 1920 by 1080p HD video. So it's kind of quite good in a way, because you've got all that kind of megapixel real estate to play with, and you only really need to use like about 2 meg, I think, for HD video. So I'm just using the front-facing camera, as I usually do my like walk-home blog. A little bit of wind just to let you know what it's like. Recording at 720p on the front-facing, and this is the rear-facing camera, which is filming 1080p, and this is kind of, again, out and about, wilds of Lana, a little bit of wind to let you know kind of what it looks like and what kind of what the audio is kind of like as well when you're out and about. So let's talk about the 6-inch screen. The screen is just ridiculously massive, and I mean, it's nice to be big because it means that you kind of have enough screen real estate to do some stuff. It means you can kind of be more productive on things like Office documents if you really want to be. Admittedly, you still can't really be productive on a touch screen. You can't really create like a complete Word document and report, for instance, but you can do editing on this. But obviously, if you want to make small edits to maybe like your CV, for instance, you can do that on the go, and you can kind of do it quite well. You can read the screen really, really well in bright light, which is absolutely fantastic. In terms of being able to hold it though, it's kind of like, it doesn't, although it's a 6-inch screen, it doesn't feel like it's a 6-inch screen in your hand, because it's thin enough that you can hold it in your hand without much hassle, and it kind of like, it fits in your hand okay. The only downside is that realistically you need 2 hands to operate it, because in the best one in the world there's no way you can get your thumb right to the very, very far top corner, or even to the very, very far bottom corner without moving your hand about and giving yourself cramp. But the big screen is nice. It's fantastic for watching video, for instance. It's fantastic for things like viewing photographs. It's fantastic for gaming. But it's too big. There's just no way in hell that I can justify carrying this around with me all day, every day, because it literally is too big. In terms of design, it looks great. It feels great. The screen's really fantastic. It, you know, it looks really sharp. It seems to have been built really well. And the battery life is ridiculous. The battery life, this lasts me all day. If I use this all day, every day, it lasts me all day. I can leave it on one charge, and that 3400 milliamp hour battery plus combined with Windows Phone, because Windows Phone uses no battery life whatsoever. That's one of the great things I like about Windows Phone, is it uses resources really sparingly. So it means that realistically you don't need an insanely overpowered device, because you don't need it, because it's not actually going to utilise all that stuff anyway. And yeah, it's nice to have a bit more graphical processing and a bit more processing power in your pocket, because it means you can play games, you can do other stuff on the go, but it's not necessarily needed if you're just doing the day-to-day stuff like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, for instance, and texting and calling and all that other kind of stuff, sending emails. The only little bugbear that I don't really like about it is the fact that the headphone jack and the charging port are on opposite ends of the device. I much prefer to have all my ports in one place, because especially if I'm playing music through this, I want to be able to plug it in and play music through it at the same time, because more often than not it drains the battery, and you know, I'm usually in a position whereby if I want to play music through like external speakers, I could do that and leave it plugged in. So it kind of looks a little bit unsightly when you've got it like that. So I kind of would prefer that they put the headphone jack in the same place as the charging port, but that's kind of personal preference. That's not really necessarily something that really matters like that. I really love the fact that it's got a dedicated camera button, because that means that there's no more soft buttons on the screen you have to worry about. You can just press the hard physical button on the top, and you can take a photo like you would be able to take a photo in any on any standard point-and-shoot camera, which is great. Also, if you press the camera button, it also brings up the camera, which is fantastic, so you don't have to fanny around if there's something you really want to capture there and then. As long as you allow for the shutter speed delay, then you're going to be able to capture the photos you want sort of reasonably quickly. So should you go out and buy it? The short answer is no, and the reason for that is simply that it's running Windows Phone, and the thing is, I tried my hardest to use that as my primary device for the entire time that I had it. I had it for about 2-3 weeks, and I tried my best to use it as my primary device, but I couldn't, because Twitter apps are crap. You can't get any decent third-party Twitter apps, they're all rubbish. The best Twitter apps are on Android. They're things like Plume, they're things like Carbon, they're things like Falcon. They're all and Talon, I think, is another one as well. They're all fantastic apps, and there's no substitute on Windows Mobile, which is a real shame because, you know, Windows Mobile has so much great. It's just really user-friendly, it looks fantastic, the live tiles are a really good concept, but it's just let down by the fact that there's no developing going on in terms of apps for the platform. And that's a real shame because it's a really great platform to use from a user standpoint. And the other thing as well is cost. The recommended retail on this is 650 quid. You could pick it up for SIM free on Amazon for about 500, but 430 to 500 quid depending on where you go. Now that's a lot of money for a phone. I mean, that's not that much cheaper than something like an iPhone 6, and that's a brand new device. It's a flagship model. That's an Apple device, right? That's running iOS. Now, why would you justify spending that kind of money on a flagship Windows Mobile device? I don't think you can, and I think where Windows Mobile really could benefit from the cheap mobile market, so they're kind of like the 150 quid phones that you see round about that kind of look a little bit iPhone-y and a little bit colourful and look quite cool, and they'll be for your mum and they'll be for your girlfriend, they'll be for kinds of people that aren't really into tech that much, really want a device that's going to be really user-friendly, easy to use. It's going to have most of the apps they want, and it's going to do the things they need it to do. And I think that's what Windows Phone will be great, because it'll be a lot cheaper than getting something like an iPhone, which is pretty much the logical choice in terms of ease of use, especially for tech noobs. And so I can't really say that you could really justify spending that kind of money on that kind of device. I think though, where this device really excels is work. Like, I think if you are a business and you're looking to deploy phones, you're thinking, oh, I'm going to give every member of staff a phone, go Windows Mobile, because I tell you what, it's got the best mail app I've ever used. The mail app is absolutely insane. It's just so easy to use. And I think that's kind of where Microsoft are really great at their things. They do, like, email is fantastic. The email app in there is great. And from a corporate standpoint, it's fantastic. It supports signatures really well. It does all these other kind of things. And yeah, I know things like the iOS mail app are alright, and they can kind of do the same sort of things, but it doesn't feel as good, it doesn't feel as fluid, it doesn't feel as though it's kind of been designed with users in mind. And things like Office on it are great because it means you can sort of edit documents on the go. Now, you won't necessarily want to, but you can do it, and that's kind of quite good, you know, if you're in a meeting and all you have is your Nokia 1520 or your 930, whatever Lumia device you happen to have around with you, it means you can edit Office documents on the go, and especially with something like the 1520 with a huge screen, you can kind of make use of the screen real estate and edit the documents in a kind of a bigger way. So has it really sold me on Windows Phone? Definitely not. It's not going to make me go out and buy, you know, the next Windows Phone that comes out. I'm going to say, oh yeah, Windows Phone's great. I don't think it's just not there. It just needs a little bit more refinement. It needs Microsoft to team up with some big players like Google, for instance. There's no native YouTube app. Why not? Because Google doesn't want to have anything to do with Microsoft, but they need to team up because it's beneficial for Microsoft and Windows Phone, and it's also beneficial to Google because they get more ad revenue. So it's kind of like a bit of a 50-50 thing. The same with things like Dropbox. There needs to be a native app for Dropbox because the Cloud 6 app is alright. It does some of the same sort of things as Dropbox, but it doesn't do it as well, and it doesn't kind of look as nice, and it's kind of, you don't want to have to use the third-party app to do what you want to do on every other platform. So who should get this device? Well, I would say someone that's got lots of money and wants ease of use and really likes Windows stuff, go and get it. So your gran, for instance, your granddad, your dad, something like that, and then fine for enough, go out and buy it because it's really simple and easy to use, and it will embed everything there. And also business people, because if you are running Office 365 or any Microsoft stuff everywhere, then it's going to be great. It's easy to use in terms of from an IT standpoint, where I stand from in terms of IT support. Stupidly easy to support, fantastic. Mail works great. You've got some fantastic apps that you can use in terms of corporate, and you can tie it down via Active Directory, and you can join it to your domain, you can join it to your network, and you can control things, which is fantastic. So yes, unfortunately, I can't really recommend the device. I'm going to have to say it's not rubbish, it's just kind of, there's lots of things lacking, and there's kind of better devices for the money. I mean, for the price, you may as well get yourself an Xperia Z2, or even the original Xperia Z, or even any other Android phone, really. Something like the HTC M8, for instance, roughly the same sort of price. And even, you know, if you're in terms of ease of use, you may as well just try and pick up an iPhone 5S if you can as well, because that kind of will be the same sort of price as what you'd expect to pay for the Lumia 1520. It's a bit of a shame, but I can't really, I mean, obviously got to tell the truth, I'm not going to lie, there's no point in lying. So yeah, if you've got Windows Phone and you've got, you know, any comments to add to this video, obviously put them in the description below. I'll put the GSM Arena link for the specs and everything there. I'll put some links to the Nokia 1520 like official sites and stuff, so you can check that out, and also maybe an Amazon link as well if I'm feeling in the mood. But that's pretty much it. Obviously, I'd like to thank Connects for contacting me and asking me to do the review. It's not probably been the best, but it's been, you know, it's been quite a privilege to actually have a go at testing the device, testing one of their flagship models. They just need to refine some things there, I think, and they'll be, you know, they need to look at trying to take that market, which most other people have. And there is a reason why only 5% of only 5% of smartphones are running Windows Mobile, and that's a real shame, because Windows Mobile is great. I apologise for my croaky voice. I've still got man flu / something, I don't really know what, so I've been sounding overly manly in this video, but yes, obviously hit me up on Twitter at AzzyChill, send me an email, aaron@azzychill.com. Obviously remember to thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done already, and apart from that, I shall catch you in a later video. There's also a couple of things, no there isn't.